BlogTalkRadio.com presents
David Waldman.
Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, October 9th, 2020. Time for yet another show, and we can have another show, too. That's a nice way to start off the day. We had a gigantic internet outage here at the Kagro in the Morning World headquarters yesterday, anyway. And apparently a lot of you around the country as well, as it turns out. But not the same outage. We just had a localized outage, and then but it was so persistent that we were checking one of those where has Verizon effed up their internet coverage maps, and it looked like a lot of the East Coast was affected by some sort of slowdown. Anyway, I don't know. Did it happen to you? Well, it didn't happen the same way to us. Here, somebody just, I guess, sliced through the cable that Verizon runs to the area that feeds all of our internet and phone service, by the way. That was real fun to have happen. Not that a whole lot of action going on over the phone anymore, but it lasted quite a while. And to get today's morning post up to you, so that we could alert you that we were on the air today, I had to drive out to the parking lot of the local elementary school just to find enough cell service, which is another story about how poorly my house is served by my cell phone service, which I pay plenty for too. Anyway, but had to sit out in the parking lot and post today's morning post, catch up with news, and do the coronavirus roundup too. I'm dedicated to doing it. I want to track those things day by day, and it's been a couple times since doing it that I've had to that I've referred back to it and looked at my own email, or rather Twitter chain about it, just to see where were we on this date. It would be nice if that were preserved in some other form and I didn't have to actually do that work myself, but sometimes I just like to have those facts at my fingertip, and I love tracking to see how things are going, searching day after day for better news, and then some places we're able to find it, just not here, because Donald Trump is in charge of taking care of business on coronavirus here in the United States, and we're never going to get out of the pandemic as long as he has influence. And I insist to you that this is meaningful even after the election, even after the inauguration of Joe Biden, if everything goes well and goes as expected, for that matter. But I think as long as he has influence, followers, and people he can reach via Twitter, it may be too much for us to be able to overcome his gravity and get the critical mass of people we need informed and on board with a plan to end the pandemic. I mean, if there's still 40% of the country willing to follow his, I don't know, what word would you put on it? His advice. I mean, it's bad advice, but to follow his lead on this thing, I don't know how well we can do in containing the virus. If 40% of the country is intent on spreading it, I don't know if we can overcome it. Even with a vaccine, is 60% immunity enough to stop the spread? It might be. I mean, that's sort of the minimum threshold I've ever heard mentioned in terms of herd immunity. But all along, it's been the possibility that we might need even more than that in order to suppress the spread of the virus. So I don't know. Well, I guess we'll get our chance to find out, unless, of course, the virus takes care of yet another problem and drives the agenda despite our attempts to assert our own control over our own destiny. The virus could choose to fix this. So let's see. Just in terms of quick roundup of what we're facing this morning before we ask Ian Reifowitz to join us and tell us what we're facing for the next 100 years, because that's sort of his perspective on these things. But he follows the day-to-day news, of course, and we'll be commenting on that as well. But let's see. Of other interest, I read briefly last night, and I think I saw it over at Daily Kos on the recommended diaries list, what's now the trending list. For old timers, we say the recommended diaries list, and I guess there's actually both different, but there's community spotlight now. Anyway, I don't know how they how those categories translate to the old categories anymore. But I did happen to see somebody say, let's see, here it is. And it's even updated 4 times. So you know that the news is fresh when you find that out. Let's see. It was breaking news last night. Now it's updated news. Pence cancels campaign events. Apparently he's canceled the rest of his week following the smashing success of his carrion disguised debate appearance. And no one knows why, except, maybe Dan K knows why, because he's updated his piece 4 times, and I don't know whether it gets around to saying or finding out what the news are. Let's see. This story, though, was last night, canceling the rest of his events, including visits to Indiana, what was then tomorrow, and I guess that's now today, and no word on why. And the speculation in the original post from Dan K was, he's either got coronavirus himself, and lots of people suspected that he might, given that there were flies landing on him and he had vicious pink eye during the debate, or the possibility that Trump's illness has taken a turn for the worse and they called him back to Washington, just in case. What are our updates here? Let's see. The Hill has a story saying only that Pence has canceled his Indiana visit, but not much more. He later on says that the TV stations in Indianapolis are reporting the story saying it's a scheduling issue, but at this point in the race, you should pretty much know what your schedule is going to be. 9 days this has been set, he says, Dan K says, and all of a sudden they have a scheduling issue. Another update says, let's see. I guess he's just clarifying for all the worry warts that he's not rooting for any particular outcome with respect to the virus or something like that. And I guess we always have to issue that warning as well. All right. So mystery as to what's up next for Pence. Notes also in the highly recommended diaries and community spotlights and trending stories from yesterday evening. Still no update on Christie in terms of what he's actually dealing with. He's 6 days in the hospital and no real word, no public word from him, although lots of people have said they've spoken with him on the phone, which is supposed to be an indication that he's not on a ventilator, which I guess it is, except that we don't really know whether anybody actually spoke with him on the phone. So, big question mark there. No word on Bill Barr and what his health might be. Lots of people that we've had our eyes on. Rudy Giuliani makes no formal report. I will make this point as well. We do know that Kellyanne Conway had a positive diagnosis. We do know that Christie had a positive diagnosis. The 2 senators, and then the third, who was our third? Ron Johnson came down with it, but from some separate source. But Kayleigh McEnany, the head of security at the White House, all sorts of people have come down with it. And Trump spent yesterday touting his miracle cure, which, by the way, he announced he was going to be making available free of charge to everyone in America who needed it, except, I guess, Kellyanne Conway, Kayleigh McEnany, Christie, Tom Tillis, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee. When are they all going to get the miracle cure? It can't be a funding issue, right? It's all going to be made free for everybody in Trump's fake green screen appearance on the South Lawn, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're facing today. Let's give Ian Reifowitz a call. One other thing, I guess, that jumps out at me this morning as I get ready to call him, also involving Bill Barr. The DOJ announces, or rather a White House official apparently, tells Axios, anyway, that the long-awaited, maybe, Durham report will not be coming out before the election. Just like the Q nutters, they just keep kicking the can down the road. I'm going to give Ian a call and let him update us on what he's seeing in the morning headlines, and then take us elsewhere. So we'll let our ringy-dingies go here. It's a little heavy on the volume on this side. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Ian ought to be on the other side. This is the part where I'll say hello, Ian, and he'll say hello. All right. Hello, Ian. How are you?
Hello, this is the part where I say hello.
Yeah, see? Okay, so it's working well. That's good. How was your, I don't know if you were aware of this. How was your National Pierogi Day? That was yesterday. I forgot to announce it on the air, but I did have pierogies.
I thought every day was National Pierogi Day.
It does. Well, in some countries, that's true. But I really definitely meant to tell everybody. And then at the last minute, I chickened out thinking, look at all this competition I'll have for pierogies. Let me make sure I secure my own pierogies before I tell anybody. I'm selfish that way with potato dumplings. But
well, isn't that what they say on the when you get on an airplane? Make sure that you secure your own pierogies first.
Yes.
Before assisting other people with pierogies.
Right, that's true.
Something like that.
Yeah, and if you're lucky enough to be on an airline where pierogies fall from the ceiling, then you're in good shape. Always good choice. So yeah, National Pierogi Day. Yes, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to tell everybody. National Days, we really have to put a stop to this, quite honestly, unless we're going to share the information more widely. But, well, good news for all of us. Let's not miss, National Donut Day or anything really fantastic next time.
I'd like to have a National Day Without Days Day.
That would be great. I think we're out of days, though. There's one of everything. So, well, we can lobby for it, and probably only cost you a couple mil. So, see if you can round up the money to get that fantastic resolution passed one day by unanimous consent in the House, and your whole life changes when you get one of those, obviously, or else there wouldn't be a National Pierogi Day. It must mean something.
We could hire Elliot Brody to lobby for us. Oh, wait a minute. That Republican top fundraiser has been indicted for illegal lobbying.
That's okay. That just means his price goes up. So, look how effective I am. I've caught the notice of the feds. I haven't mentioned yet another major story. Some people think a few people plotted the murder and or kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, because she was asking them to wear masks and or stay home from work, which really I wasn't expecting people to be quite so angry about, but they were. No one could have predicted this, of course, from the storming of the Michigan State Capitol by hundreds of armed protesters screaming in the face of police who were there to keep, law and order in place. Now they love law and order. It's a very quick relationship they're going through with law and order, with hydroxychloroquine, with all sorts of things related to coronavirus and others. They can't make up their minds, but it looks like a small insurrection that was thwarted by the FBI, and I think Trump's only comment on it today, that we're talking about, I guess, I don't know how close the plot was to fruition. The FBI tends to disrupt these things in early stages anyway, but Trump's only comment on it was about how bad a person and bad a governor Whitmer was. So I guess you're supposed to infer maybe she deserved it, but he won't say exactly that. But really great for tamping down on right-wing violence. Once again, another wink and a nod and a stand-by message from Trump.
David, can I add that he slammed her last night, according to USA Today, for not saying thank you after the federal government charged 6 people with conspiring to kidnap her.
Well, that is a death penalty in Donald Trump's world. So,
right.
Yeah.
He said she's done a terrible job. She locked down her state for everyone except her husband's boating activities.
This is good for trading these charges. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, Whitmer actually did thank federal law enforcement and prosecutors, but obviously she didn't say, thank you, Donald Trump, for allowing the sun to rise in the east and yada, 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 yada. I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah,
so,
he's
back to our regularly scheduled
fun
program.
Guy. Well, it reminds me of, 100 different things that that he's done. So she didn't thank him. And was this that she didn't thank him for breaking up the plot to kill her, or didn't thank him for saving Michigan from coronavirus, or
about the
both?
Plot.
The plot. Oh, okay. Well,
and he kept on yelling at her about the masks and liberating the state, and it's just unbelible. It's just unbelievable. He went right after continuing to stoke the same kind of anger, and Whitmer slammed him. Whitmer was great. She was not going to tolerate that. But I mean, my God, he said, Governor Whitmer, open up your state, open up your schools, open up your churches. How about open up your brain, Trump?
Oh, well, no, I don't think so.
At a loss.
Yeah, what can you do? He's horrible and his time is limited, and I guess he's beginning to feel it. He spent the evening on Sean Hannity's show calling in. He's calling in a lot of shows. It's his usual habit anyway, which I guess is supposed to demonstrate that things are normal for him despite the coronavirus diagnosis. A lot of people thought he didn't sound particularly good, but yeah, that's par for the course for him. But he spent the day on the phone doing virtual interviews in which he was rejecting the possibility of a virtual debate. So I don't really know what that was supposed to mean, but he had a great time, I'm sure, calling all of his favorite shows. And I don't know. I haven't heard a reaction from him yet about Barr delaying the release of the Durham report. I'm sure he's not going to be happy about that, and will want to yell at him as soon as Barr gets off the ventilator or whatever happened to him. We don't really know. No report on his health, so we'll see. I can't figure out what's going on. I can't figure out why more administration members aren't also back up on their feet, insisting that they've been cured by the miracle from Regeneron, the company that developed the monoclonal antibody culture using fetal stem cells. By the way, of course, everyone now learning that fetal stem cells, the research on which he opposes as a supposed pro-lifer on the abortion question. But, if it comes in and steps in and saves my life, that's fine. The rest of you can't have it, except that you're all going to have it, by the way. He announced yesterday in one of his weirdo videos. This is one of 5 or so strange videos of questionable provenance that appeared on Twitter over the last day or two, in which Trump has promised to all seniors who are vulnerable but not vulnerable yet, but yet the most vulnerable somehow. And he's going to, sounds like I need some of this stuff too. They're going to give them all this brand new, high-tech, cutting-edge pharmaceutical treatment, which I'm sure the company would love to give away for free to everyone. Every senior, every American who needs it, you're all going to get the same level of care that I, the President of the United States, got, guaranteed, free of charge, which is totally not socialism. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what do his own supporters make of this? I guess the QAnon types and the rally goers love it because they're not thinking past how can I give away this brand new, high-priced medicine for free. They just figure they're going to get it. I don't know. It's not coming in the mail, I can tell you that. But I don't know. What did you happen to see those videos? Did you make anything of those, or did you skip right over that stuff?
Well, actually, I love the part where he said, I felt pretty lousy, but,
yes.
Quote, first he said, I felt pretty lousy. Then he added, quote, I'm back because I'm a perfect physical specimen and I'm extremely young.
Oh, yes, really.
I mean,
that's
okay, great. And there was another hilarious part. So he said, to my favorite people in the world, the seniors, I'm a senior. I know you don't know that. Nobody knows that. Maybe you don't have to tell them, but I'm a senior.
Okay. Yeah. We figured that part out, actually.
Yeah. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Yeah, he had a bit of a smirk on his face for that one, so I'm sure he'll tell everybody he was kidding, but it's very weird how you can't always tell with him. And but we figured out that he was a senior. For me, it was when he drove the golf cart right onto the green.
I was confused, having seen him, at his senior prom last week.
Yes. You never know exactly what he means. And, right. Well, like most seniors in high school, he's short of breath going up a flight of stairs and is flying around on Marine One. That happens a lot among teenagers.
Maybe that's what he meant. Maybe he meant I'm a senior in high school.
Yeah. Well, I read at their level, maybe. That may be a little harder than... Yeah, right. Well, some of them, But at any rate, all right. Well, it's another crazy day, and I guess we're in for another batch of videos until it starts raining in Washington, D.C., and he can no longer fake being outside Most people thought that was shot in front of a green screen. It had a real weird flat look to it. And he's put out a couple of different videos at different times of day, but the lighting is always the same on him. But they are putting in an effort. If it really was filmed in front of a green screen, at one point I think somebody directs a fan or something at him and blows his hair around a little bit, just to make it look like, he's definitely outdoors. But a lot of questions,
For what it's worth, I did actually read on BuzzFeed today that they talked to some experts and who thought that video actually was done outside.
It certainly could have been. They can put him on a golf cart and wheel him out, and I don't think he can walk that distance at the moment without getting out of breath. But I guess if you got all day, no public events, you make your way out there, catch your breath for 20 minutes or so, and then shoot the video. I heard from a few people who said, I work in a video production studio, and it looks for all the world to me like a green screen. So I guess we'll never be able to tell for sure, and they're not keen on admitting it. But all it really would require is, carting him out there and then taking everybody out of the background and forbidding anybody from going in and out of the south lawn entrance, which I assume is easy to do because they're all home quarantining because they all have COVID. So I don't know. Although I do think somebody probably would have spotted him on the south lawn for however long it took to shoot 5 videos. But I guess not. Everybody's staying away from him for fear of catching the disease, I guess. So we'll get to the bottom of this, no doubt. And it doesn't, I guess, ultimately make very much difference whether, if it was fake, it doesn't tell me very much. He's alive and able to speak off the cuff for 2 minutes without choking. So that looks like an improvement. Yeah. Oh, well, that he's always been able to do. That's a natural thing for him. I wasn't measuring that change. I was looking for changes in other behavior, but he's able to put it together. I understand during his phone calls to Hannity and Fox News, there are a couple of places where the phone goes dead, where he mutes the phone and then comes back, clearing his throat and saying, "Excuse me." So he's had some coughing fits that, I wouldn't necessarily say he's even taking great pains to hide them. He after all, lets out the "excuse me" afterwards. So something has happened. But I wouldn't want him coughing in the phone anyway, whether he was sick or not. No one wants to hear that. So, I don't know. Big mystery to unravel over the weekend. In the meantime, let's see. COVID-19, of course, very much in the news. And the subject of your post from Monday that you shared with me in preparation for the show, more specifically here, your both sidesism story about how the New York Times is handling the COVID-19 questions swirling around both campaigns somehow, although one guy has it and one doesn't. At any minute the other one could too, and would he tell us? And isn't he really too prepared against the virus, one might ask?
Yeah, well, I've written a couple of these both sidesism stories before, and really Eric Bowler, who was at Daily Kos for a while and now is doing his own thing, is really wonderful at covering media in this way. So I want to recognize his work. But in the midst of a long weekend when Trump was in the hospital for COVID, the Monday morning New York Times, along with some stories about Trump on the front page, of course, the man is literally in the hospital and having lied about the timeline. They decide that this is the time to run a front page story about Joe Biden and his campaign's protocols. And, the headline talks about questions around the Biden. There weren't any questions. If you read the article, first of all, the first 2 paragraphs are about how, Biden's following all the safety protocols. Then it mentions that there had been a question about how often Biden was being tested. The Biden campaign said it was being tested regularly, and people pressed them about whether he had been tested every day. Well, maybe he missed, a random Tuesday last week, so they can't say every day, but they're not going to, that's a front page story. What he said, and then by the way, the next paragraph said, and the Biden campaign now committed to going forward to announcing all the test results. So you'll know whether he's been tested every day. So even the question that was in the past of literally, absurdly minor significance has now been answered. But yet this merits a front page headline. So what I said was, look, this is what the many sources in the mainstream media do. This is what the New York Times under Dean Baquet does. It's because they haven't still learned the lessons of 4 years ago and even more than 4 years ago. And that is, they sit there and their biggest fear is that some Republican will say, you're biased against us. Right? Because they will anyway, right? The Republicans say social media is biased against them because it doesn't put their lies at the top of everybody's feed. That's bias, right? I mean, if you're Rush Limbaugh, then anybody to your left is a communist.
Yes.
Well, this is what Dean Baquet and his people, run around thinking of. Literally, it seems all the time. Not let's tell the truth. Not let's present an objective picture of what's going on. It's, oh my God, they can't say we're liberal biased.
Yeah, they might find out.
And I just sort of described this hypothetical meeting where he's talking to his editors over the weekend, and he's like, well, we got all this stuff about Trump because he's got COVID even after he didn't wear the mask, and he's lying about the timeline, and his doctors are lying. Well, we better get something about Biden too. Go find something, and we'll put it on the front page.
I guess so.
You could see them. You could see the wheels turning. And I said they still haven't learned from the butthurt emails coverage of 2016. You had 400,000 Trump scandals.
Yeah.
And every day it was butthurt emails. That's the side, and it's awful.
Yeah, a recurring problem, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I think we've known for a long time that they're worried about being accused of something, and but it's amazing that they haven't learned that the accusation is going to come no matter what they do. I guess they just don't read the comments section, which is always good advice, usually. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Ian Reifowitz is still with us. We were discussing as we headed out to the break, in particular, right as the break started, the idea that somehow the New York Times has not caught on to the fact that they'll be criticized from the right for being too biased toward the left, no matter what they do. And quite honestly, if they just ran the Republican National Committee's platform as front page news, cut up into little articles, and included the comment section from Breitbart in the stories as well, they'd still be criticized. Well, where are the Daily Caller commenters or whatever? Even if it was all there, they would simply make up a critique that wasn't true. That's just sport. Hit the New York Times because maybe they'll either slant their coverage or do something stupid and infuriating to liberals in an effort to keep us off their back. And they have never learned to deal with this and just either say, this is where we are as a newspaper and we're pretty sure that our reporting is solid and balanced, or I don't know what you tell yourself in a pep talk or a company-wide policy, but they just don't have it.
Right. It's a classic Charlie Brown and, Lucy pulling the football away for our usual men of a certain age cultural reference.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
He never learns. There's no winning because they're not looking to be satisfied. They're using their dissatisfaction with the mainstream media as a political tool. The complaining is the point. It's called working the refs. So there's two results. One is they were able to whip up their base against the media bias. And of
Yeah.
course, Trump is far from the first to do this. Goes back, if not further, it certainly goes back to Nixon and Spiro Agnew, who slammed, nattering nabobs of negativism, if I
Yes.
remember right. So there's working up, getting your base worked up against the media, and then B, if it can shift the media's coverage in your direction, then that's an added bonus. And clearly in 2016 it did, because we had the Butter emails coverage, which without question helped Donald Trump. There's just no question. And the Butter emails goes to, the front page treatment given Clinton Cash, which was literally a joke, unsourced campaign oppo research published as news, and were treated as news when it was published in book form. On and on and on and on. Sometimes it's not enough to have a both sides, cover both sides with the same amount of a newsprint in terms of questions or problems, when one side, is Donald Trump and doing the things that Donald Trump does. No, you don't put a front page story about Joe Biden on and quote unquote questions. It was absurd. It was absurd. But this is what they do. Democrats say the sun rises in the east. Republicans disagree. You have to say one is wrong.
Course, really.
They're doing a little more of that, but this story, to me was another example of the Times just not understanding the difference between telling the truth and quote unquote false equivalency.
Yeah. It sounded like a sound effect, an almost appropriate sound effect leaked in there somewhere. I don't know where that came from. Sounded like a bicycle horn or something, like a clown.
Yeah, well, no, it's actually the old Model T.
Oh, okay.
I got a text, but it was a political text, so it's okay. Did you see, by the way? Did you see? You can find. Well, I can send you the link. A brilliant new YouTube video by Wayne Knight, who played Newman on Seinfeld.
Oh, yeah.
He's dressed as Newman as a postal worker, and he's urging people to get out and vote to protect the post office, and it's hilarious. I'll send you a link.
Right.
It's absolutely fabulous.
Sure, yeah, I'd like that one. We'll see if we can include that in our roundup. Everyone will be curious about seeing it now. So that's your text or email notification?
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
well, I don't want
like
it to be the same as everybody else's. There's 10 people in a room. I want to know it's mine. I'm the only idiot who uses that one. I figured it was the old farty old fartiest one. So
okay, well, I might have to look for that one, because just want to put it on in the show every time you mention something like, they never learn the New York Times. This is their policy, and then that honk honk. Okay, it's
I'm
a clown
sending
show.
it to you as a direct tweet. That's the easiest way for me to send it to
right.
you. A direct message of
yes.
What it's called.
Yeah, that was my only lifeline during my internet outage. Was one of the few things that I could make work over the weak cell signal that I had. So a couple of important conversations continued that way. All right, let's see other items. Oh, it reminded me as you were telling me about what Trump was slamming Whitmer for. And I guess complaining about what, as he said, her husband, the state was locked down except for her husband's boating activities. This is another favorite parlor game of the Republicans. They love to find instances where Democrats have done things that appear to be contrary to the lockdown policies. And I guess Trump spent some of his time the other night complaining about Nancy Pelosi's visit to the hairdresser some weeks ago. I mean, that was a 1-second story. Thankfully, they didn't linger on that one for too long when it came out. But he's still bitter that she went to a place where apparently she was set up as well, where the salon owner told the hairdresser that it would be okay if Pelosi came into a otherwise closed shop that occasionally opened for single clients in order to keep the crowds down, so that there wasn't as much chance for transmission of the virus. They let her in as the one customer that time, and there are security cameras inside the salon, and they captured the footage. And it just so happened that the owner of the salon was watching at the exact moment to catch, surprise, Nancy Pelosi walking from getting her hair washed in the sink over to the chair to get her hair styled without a mask on, and this was the crime of the century. Meanwhile, I understand we learned yesterday that at almost the same time, I guess a little bit earlier, White House Chief of Staff was hosting a 70-person wedding for his daughter in the middle of Atlanta's lockdown, and that apparently doesn't capture any of the president's attention, because that's cool because we're doing it, as opposed to when we catch them, we need to tell everybody to kidnap or assassinate them. Seems balanced. I think the New York Times could probably handle that one.
Absolutely.
Anyway, just wanted to get that particular story out there as well. But I should be letting you drive the agenda a little bit while you're here for your visit. Anything coming up that is nearing preparation for publication or bubbling up as an idea in the future for you that you can share with us?
Right, a couple of one of each, so to speak.
Oh, good. Right.
There's a piece that is far along in the process. I don't, you never know exactly when it'll go up in terms of the schedule, but my guess is sometime this weekend on taxing the rich. I talk a bit about the fact that's got to be part of the agenda. That New Jersey has done this. They've increased the tax rate by a little under 2%, from 8 and change to 10 and change on income between 1 million and 5 million. Right, so it was already at that highest rate for income over 5 million. They basically restored a tax that had existed in a few years earlier, but that Christie blocked from being renewed. And
look what happened to him.
Yeah. New York is talking about it, but and the state legislature, which is dominated by Democrats, wants to do it, but Cuomo doesn't want to do it. And I talk about that and why Cuomo is wrong, in expressing concerns about people leaving the state. There's been a ton of research, and it doesn't happen. People don't leave the state. Like, you can even see New Jersey, where the neighboring Pennsylvania has a tax rate that an income tax rate that's 1/3 as high, and they're not going to Pennsylvania. And some of these people could move 20 minutes and be in Pennsylvania. It's just not happening. The research is very clear on that. And then I pivot to talking about, doing it at the federal level, and I talk about Biden's plans, which are terrific. And Kamala Harris talked a little bit about them the other night, how they only raise taxes on income earned over $400,000. And let me do a slight digression. It's very important that we explain this the right way as progressives. It's not that it raises taxes on people making $400,000 or more. I mean, it does, but I think in some ways, when we say it like that, it makes people possibly think that once a person hits $401,000, all of their income is now taxed at a higher rate. That's not accurate. What as I'm sure you know, but what happens is it's only the income above 400,000 that's taxed at a higher rate. The income below 400,000 is taxed at the rate that as at a lower rate. It's what's called marginal income. And I don't want to get too deep into the woods. I'm not an accounting here, but that's the point. People go, oh my God, if you raise taxes, you want to raise taxes by 10% on people making over $400,000 or whatever, something like that. Yeah. You're not raising it on the full 400,000. You're only raising it on that first dollar of over 400,000 and then above. So it's still a relatively tiny tax increase for the people making not too much above 400,000. Anyway, I go through Biden's plans. They're terrific plans, and then I to make the point, I said, listen, people at the very top are making out like bandits during the pandemic, and that I'm not saying they're stealing, but the old saying goes, they're making out like bandits. I mean, it's crazy. Mother Jones highlighted some data, which I think they got from Senator. It's escaping me the source of the data, but it was published in Mother Jones, and it was also published on the original source. 463 billionaires in the U.S., right, by Forbes. They looked at how much they've increased their wealth from mid-March to mid-September, and the average is $1.3 billion increased wealth per billionaire.
No, not even split among them. Okay, great.
I think it's okay to raise taxes on the wealthiest, and in particular on the people at the highest levels, and they've done well. Meanwhile, 20 million people lost their jobs, and only half of those people have gotten a job back. income income on the job is down 4.4%. As I related, since mid-March, and that's the people who have a job, right? So yeah, I think I said it's sort of biblical or karmic. There's a moral necessity here. This is a terrible time in America right now and all over the world, and people who are succeeding during that time, they've got to pay something back to help the people who are suffering. And if we don't have them do that, then it's not just some sort of progressive value that's not being followed. There's an Old Testament God who's going to come down. You can't do this. It's just disgusting. So that's the post that's in the works. It's pretty much done. It's gone through 2 drafts. I mean, I don't want to talk about too much about how the sausage gets made, but it should be going up on the front page. I would guess over the weekend. So that's a little bit of fire and brimstone from me on that.
Well, we'll look forward to that. I think you'll find a lot of people wanting to pick up on that and share that. We always have an eye on that, and I guess the latest stats on it, and particularly the fact that this money was pocketed during the pandemic when so many of us either were on the bubble or lost jobs or at least lost income, and sometimes you were able to keep your job but only with a pay cut. Who knows? And you wondered where that money disappeared to. It got highly concentrated in a very few hands. And interesting. I mean, honestly, adding an extra billion on top of the income that billionaires were already getting. So now if you were only just making it as a billionaire, now you're a multi-billionaire. Right. So fantastic. So we're only talking about taking a small slice of that extra billion, let's say. I mean, it will also hit the first billion. I assume that's true too. But still, yes, if you lump another billion on top of that, well, that's just more money that you can afford to share. And probably there's not even a whole lot of billionaires that don't even deep down agree that that's disposable. We can get rid of that. And they were either going to spend it on a yacht, or maybe some of them, a few of them, occasionally were struck by the messaging of we're all in this together during these extraordinary times. And maybe they would give some of that back. Not Jeff Bezos, though. Apparently he's not interested in that. But somehow he's looking to get more money out of you by delivering your packages by drone or something.
Right. But to me, we are all in this together, and that's what it means to be Americans. When you're an American, you're supposed to care about your fellow Americans. It doesn't just mean, saluting the flag or standing during the national anthem. If you love America, you're supposed to love your fellow Americans. You're supposed to participate and share and contribute to ensuring that America is at its best. And America is at its best when all of the American people are able to have a decent life. I'm not saying everybody has to have a Mercedes, of course, that's not the point. We are saying that there is a base level that people, need to have in order for us to be able to say that we are a community. I always come back to what Barack Obama said over and over again. We're one American family, and Joe Biden has echoed some of this language as well. And you don't get that with Trump. Trump's idea of America is love him.
Yes,
right?
True.
I mean, basically, there's no sense of community there. And to me, that kind of patriotism or national identity is dovetails perfectly with progressive values, whereas Republican values are, I got mine, go get yours. There's no we. There's no we Americans, and so that's why I think as progressives, we want to make sure that we emphasize our version of patriotism and our version of national identity and national solidarity, because it's one that I think is inspiring, and it helps buttress our policy views, and it's one that most American people agree with. So it's win-win.
Well, yeah, I mean, it struck me as we were thinking about the what is it that we hope that all Americans have the ability to share in, and if we can't put our finger on it, and it's not a material thing, it's just it's dignity is what it seems like. The ability to live a life with some personal dignity, which I guess is at a low ebb in terms of value in the Trump era. The guy, lives off of denying the dignity of other human beings, and anybody who's got any, he looks to strip it away from them if he can. If you go into service in his administration, it seems like the only way out is to find yourself humiliated, thrown under the bus, and kicked out, and looking forward perhaps to a life as a born again never Trumper, maybe. But it doesn't seem like that he will allow others to live with any sort of dignity around him, because I don't know what. I guess it makes it poses the possibility that he may have some equals out there, and his life is a gilded heaven, and it can't possibly be the case that anybody else is as rich or successful or smart as him, and it's like a personal. Well, it's a gigantic personal psychosis for him, and the worst possible person to be in charge of steering the American ship of state, as it were.
That's right. I mean, if you think about even, so there's the dignity aspect, but then there's also the self-interest. The self-interest of the people who are being asked to contribute more, right? The society is going to do better as a whole, which means you, the rich person, is going to do better as a whole if everybody has a chance to contribute. I mean, there's a million examples, but the one that comes to mind most obviously, just for whatever reason, is somebody who's British, but it's certainly a parallel, right? J.K. Rowling. If the British state hadn't provided her with the means to support herself with that dreaded word welfare, while she was writing Harry Potter, if Britain had just said, oh, everybody's in it for themselves, and she wasn't able to pay the bills while she wrote Harry Potter, and instead, who knows what would have happened to her. Think about how many billions of dollars that Harry Potter has brought to the British economy, right? That's just a perfect example of why you don't, as a society, ever want to let anybody's potential go untapped. And if somebody, needs a break, needs a hand, you're helping them because as a society, it's the right thing to do. It's your fellow American or your fellow British person or whatever. But you're also probably helping your society, or at least overall, you're helping your society. It's worth that investment on a large scale because you don't know who the next J.K. Rowling is going to be, or who the next, inventor, person who's going to come along and cure cancer maybe is growing up in a poor family. And if they don't get a good education, they're not going to achieve that goal. So wow. It's the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do. And if you love America, then you want America to succeed, then you got to help all Americans have a chance to succeed.
That's a good one, a good point. Too abstract, I'm sure, for billionaires, and particularly people who believe in their own greatness, and that's very often the theory that they come to adopt eventually. I'm a billionaire because of how great I am, and how good my ideas are, and I suppose they come to believe, the likelihood of somebody else coming up with a great idea, if they were able to come up with great ideas, they'd be billionaires already. So, yeah, that's your prosperity gospel approach to things instead. But, yeah, good point. Certainly, you never know. And I'm sure, well, a lot more people come to rest on the the idea that, what about the possibility of someone curing cancer, and not necessarily thinking about, well, what about the possibility of somebody writing Harry Potter? Because, conservatives, they would just say, well, that doesn't even matter. But I don't see them giving up their royalty checks if they're entitled to any from the Harry Potter empire or any of the merchandising or anything like that.
They're all Slytherin anyway.
But that that's true. Yeah, that may justify it for them. But. I didn't even know that story. Sorry, not sorry. It's okay. They've learned to live with it, I think. But I never really would have put that particular point together on it. I guess I didn't know the backstory of her life either, but important point. Okay, I wasn't expecting to go that way. I think
she was in an abusive marriage or somewhat abusive marriage. She left the husband, and she was basically on welfare and writing her book in coffee shops, and look at where she is now. And as I said, look at what all that she has done for Britain, for the British economy,
for the whole world at this point.
a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. In terms of the income stream, no one can doubt that, right? But all the things that didn't or might not have happened otherwise, it certainly could have happened around some other series of books, I suppose. But it really became a worldwide phenomenon. People going to theme parks based on it, and huge multi-billion-dollar franchise, not all of which is going to her, and it's being shared by all sorts of extractive billionaires around the world. They ought to be very happy about that.
And all the taxes she's paying to the British government, she's, even just on the taxes, she's paid back that welfare probably 100,000-fold. And then, of course, all the other, income she's brought in. I mean, think about it. Look, you got to invest in your people. And that's what social welfare policy, or whatever you want to call it, social spending is. It's investing in your people, whether it's welfare, education, roads, bridges, providing health care to people who couldn't afford premium, couldn't afford to pay the premiums. All of these things are morally the right thing to do. They're also strategically the right thing to do, and they are what a society does if it's supposed to have a sense of national community. People don't like the word nationalism, but I come from in the scholarly community, there's good nationalism and there's bad nationalism. Most of it's bad, frankly. But the good kind is the kind that says we're all in this together, and it's called civic nationalism. I don't want to get too scholarly on you, but you can also just call it, a sense of community, or it's not really patriotism, because patriotism really a relationship between an individual and their government, as opposed to individual relationship between the individual and the fellow members of the national community. And there, I've put everybody to sleep. Sorry.
No.
Back to the Future. Slytherin. Wake up. Okay.
Well, we can live through dry periods without cultural references and follow along. So, and always good to test our mental capacity heading into a weekend when it's so easy to fall asleep. But okay, well, so there's good nationalism out there, like good cholesterol. You can find it too. All right, interesting. Not that was. It hasn't been a great. We haven't spent a great deal of time. I think you have brought it up in the past, though. And yes. It makes logical sense. Sure, there are plenty of ways to take, pride in national community that would be constructive. And, one of them is paying your taxes and being satisfied with that, and not looking to dodge every dollar or thinking that it makes you smart to be able to skim a living off of national investment that others make while you make none, as let's say, Donald Trump might have done by paying $750 of taxes, and having insisted in the debates in 2016 that avoiding taxation is what makes him smart. This makes me a good candidate for president. Candidates for president should be smart. I'm smart because I figured out a way to live among the elite and live a great lifestyle, even when I don't deserve it and I don't contribute to anybody else's ability to do the same. That's what America wants. That's what the coal miners wanted in the election, and I guess they got it.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, Mr. $750, don't even get me started. This guy, if you want to flaunt your criminality, then I guess, this is how you live. I really do feel like there's a part of him, I don't want to get too psychological, that almost wants to be caught. You don't do these things without a little bit of self-sabotage. Maybe we shouldn't go down that road. But the question of him being, mentally off is something that is always sort of in the news with Trump. And the fact that he maybe is reacting badly to some of the medication, some of the experimental medication he's on has been in the news. And we talked a little bit earlier about Nancy Pelosi very, very smartly introducing this bill in the House relating to the 25th Amendment, right? It would establish a formal body within Congress, which is something that's allowed for in the 25th Amendment, but isn't specified. So this bill would create a bipartisan 11-member panel that would be authorized to make Trump sit, or make a president sit for tests and whatever, be able to do a medical assessment. Yeah. Just smart to get this out there, smart to get this in the news. look, Nancy Pelosi, she she knows what she's doing. She knows what she's doing. It doesn't matter that this isn't going to become law. This is about tweaking. This is about tweaking. Donald Trump needs to be tweaked. Donald Trump deserves to be tweaked. And in an election season, this is what you do. You tweak your opponent to make them look stupid and make them look unfit, more importantly, and remind voters that he is unfit. I mean, this Nancy Pelosi thing is great, and we can talk about it a little more if you want.
Yeah, we could. Our break is coming up shortly, but if you happen to have the time today to discuss it a little more on the other side, I'd be happy to do that, because this is an interesting prospect, certainly, and you don't talk about the 25th Amendment is just sort of laid at rest for all of this time, and we never needed it more.
Right. Well, the assumption is that because you have a Republican vice president and a Republican cabinet, that it wouldn't be invoked. Not that it shouldn't be invoked, but it wouldn't be invoked because they're so partisan that they wouldn't. I mean, it's not supposed to be, and I'm not suggesting it would be a wise thing at this point to start process of removing Trump 4 weeks before the election. But it's just it's a political move, and it's sort of the echo was there. I happened to be watching, as we talked earlier in the break, I happened to be watching the James Comey movie on Showtime. And one of the very climactic scenes after Comey has been fired by the FBI, as director of the FBI, is Rod Rosenstein talking to Andy McCabe and saying, "I'll wear a wire. Trump, the 25th Amendment needs to be invoked. This guy is nuts." And then, of course, the same day that I happened to be watching it, not that I watched it the night it came out, but the same day I've been watching it, Nancy Pelosi pushes this thing. So it was a great echo for me, at least.
All right. Yeah, well, so it keeps it timely, and I understand from keeping one eye on Twitter that we're just a few minutes away from the beginning of her, press conference on the subject. So perhaps if you can hang on, we'll return to it and discuss it just a little bit more after the break. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Ian's still with us. We'll wrap up so we can let you get on with your day here. But I guess it's just about time for Nancy Pelosi to start on her press conference about this. I was caught by surprise by her making a big enough deal out of it. Actually approaching it with some legislation in mind. I thought not a bad idea as an offhand comment just to tweak Trump, but as you said, well, one, they have a legitimate legislative proposal on the table, and two, no, obviously the Republican Senate they're not going to return from their adjournment to take this up, and they won't take it up after their adjournment is over either. They're obviously not interested in doing this, but yeah, the 25th Amendment is kind of laying dormant for the most part since its adoption. It's been used occasionally voluntarily by presidents undergoing surgical procedures, and they just say, okay, just for the time being, the vice president will be here to, just to stand watch and make sure that America isn't left unguarded and unprepared while I'm under anesthesia. It's just a formality. But, the provisions of the 25th Amendment, like hostilely invoking the 25th Amendment against a president who refuses to recognize their disability, not a situation we've been in before. And it was sort of anticipated by those who framed out the 25th Amendment, but it's a very convoluted process, very difficult, but it does lay out there as a basic thing that the vice president and the majority of the cabinet can get together and declare the president's unfitness, even if he won't. But it's subject to review by Congress. Once the president says he's regained his capacity to lead and to take back over the job, it would take a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress to keep him out of it. So that's unlikely to happen when the president's got allies in Congress. But it does also reserve the right for Congress to create some sort of other process for an external review or an external check against the president's insistence that no, I'm fine. And Donald Trump would never cede control willingly, even if we were going under anesthesia. That would probably freak him out, quite honestly. I don't know what he would be like under anesthesia, but at any rate, Yeah, so I guess they're taking advantage of this, using this opportunity, this loophole. Not really a loophole. I mean, it's written into the amendment to propose a commission. Not that I think not only will the legislation not go anywhere, but an 11-member bipartisan, evenly divided commission is unlikely to be able to come up with anything either. But they don't want to also hang around at the inherent unfairness of the design. So you make it fair. It's not going anywhere legislatively at the moment, but much more aggressive a discussion of the 25th Amendment than I've ever seen from anyone in Congress, let alone the Speaker of the House. This is really something to go forward and say, no, this ought to be discussed, even if it doesn't have any effect on Donald Trump and his term in office, because that may be just about over. But obviously, we're in brand new territory here. We've crossed over into the world where it's possible to have a lunatic president in the United States, and we ought to be prepared for a second one if it ever comes to pass.
Well, yeah, and his only response is to talk about crazy Nancy. Well, she's crazy like a fox, because this is a really smart move politically. This dominates the news today. It absolutely brings it up. It carries Trump and his, whole, COVID response, to his own, within his own White House. It just extends that story through the weekend, and it really does get people saying, "Geez, wow, maybe he really is incapacitated in some way." It's a brilliant political move, and it is necessary, and it may be one of those things that Democrats do when they have control of the White House and Congress. It's just, again, it's a very neutral thing. It's just setting up a process. It's not doing anything in particular, one way or the other. But it's just smart, and I like smart Nancy. I just do.
Well, then today's the day, and we should enjoy it today and this morning and into the weekend. And we'll see what comes of it. I think, the story part of it will be over probably by the next time we speak next Friday. But the effects of it will linger. There's just not enough time between now and the election to forget. And Donald Trump will do nothing to let us forget that he's teetering on the edge of total insanity and maybe driven over the edge by the medication. The experimental medication, he says, is the miracle cure. And by the way, you're all going to be able to get just as crazy for free sometime soon. Probably when he announces the comprehensive health plan, and or you get the $200 gift card that he's now contemplating. He says that, too, he's going to mail out before the election. So we're all going to get this free stuff before the election. We're going to get $200 in the mail before the election, because the mail can carry all these things. Don't worry about it. And even if we don't have sorting machines, looking to be a crazy couple of weeks heading into it. So I appreciate your taking some time out and explaining just how crazy it might become, short-term and long-term. Ian, thank you.
I'm always happy. It's always a pleasure to come on and chat with you, David.
All right. Well, we'll keep doing it. And in the meantime, if you can't wait until next Friday for more Ian and the releases on Daily Kos's front page are not enough for you, and you still, for some reason, maybe you're still waiting for the mail to deliver your copy of his most recent book, well, then I guess it won't help you any to order another one. But I wouldn't mind if you did, neither would he. So where do you want to remind everybody once again?
Well, sure.
I know
you get new listeners every week.
That's
as the
true.
Show grows exponentially.
I capture somebody and sit them down and force them.
So the book is called The Tribalization of Politics, How Rush Limbaugh's Race-Baiting Rhetoric on the Obama Presidency Paved the Way for Trump, and it's available in all of your usual online suspects. And do try to support independent booksellers as much as you can. And I hope you check it out. And so thanks again, David, for having me on, and I look forward to talking with you next week.
All right. We're looking forward to it as well. Sometimes I try to guess what will happen between now and then, but I should probably give that up. So it's not worked out yet. All right. Looking forward to it. We'll see you again next week. Have a great weekend. And
you too, David.
Enjoy it. All right. Thanks. And I'm going to check out that Comey thing. It was on Showtime as well. Showtime. Send us a check. That's the biggest plug I've got for you, Showtime. Okay. Thanks, Ian. Check it out. And we'll talk to you again next week.
You got it.
Can only imagine what we'll be talking about next. Okay. In fact, I can't even tell you what we're going to be talking about next on the show, because quite honestly, it could be any one of a number of things. Let's see. I'm going to check in Pocket and see what have I put together for myself. I have a whole plan usually the evening before, and then it falls apart as new stories come in. I guess we'll throw this one into the mix in terms of crazy Trump while we wait for signs that fun things are happening with Nancy Pelosi and look for reactions to that on Twitter. Trump this morning, I guess, in his his usual morning rage tweeting now with steroids. We have his accusation that once again another story has surfaced that totally proves him completely right on the whole mail-in voting fraud story, except that it doesn't. Once again, he has missed the mark and read only the headlines. And once again, I guess we have to admonish, in this case anyway, WRIC, which is an ABC News affiliate. And is that, where is WR? Is that, makes me think, is that Richmond, Virginia's Channel 8 News? I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. But yeah, I mean, I guess as I pull up their website and look at how they divide their news, Virginia News comes up top. So I guess it's the Richmond, Virginia. I don't know who wrote the headline. It comes from the Nexstar Media Wire, which I know nothing about. I don't think I'm not in the news business. It wouldn't have come up. I don't know whether that's like even a legit source. It seems like it's probably a real story, but designed for the eye of Donald Trump. The headline that he latched onto in his tweet: U.S. postal worker in New Jersey arrested, accused of dumping mail and election ballots. So, of course, that'll give Donald Trump a heart attack. Figuratively speaking, a heart attack. No evidence that it's real or physical, but we'd welcome the news just in terms of like getting facts. We always love news. That would be bad news, but we love getting news. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, Elizabeth Chamurak, Chmurak, I guess had the task for WRIC, Channel 8 in Richmond, of taking this Nexstar Media Wire story and turning it into something for them, which under the headline of the sensational headline has caught Donald Trump's eye. Then, of course, if you go and read the story, as they admonish you to do now on Twitter when you're retweeting a thing too quickly, it now will say, you can read this story, and guess what? Now, this has an extra angle of interest for me in particular, and I guess for all of those listening here at Kagro in the Morning World headquarters. You can prick up your ears and listen to this. The dateline is Newark, New Jersey. A U.S. Postal Service mail carrier in New Jersey has been charged by federal authorities. Hi, federal authorities. That demands a authoritative voice. For allegedly throwing away bundles of mail, which is, of course, against the law, and that's why he was arrested. And this bundle of mail included 99 general election ballots that were supposed to be delivered. Now, before I get into the special section, that's for the enjoyment of myself and those here in the headquarters. Again, what we're talking about here is Donald Trump, of course, is sure that this is a story about a postal worker looking through ballots being returned to the elections authorities, having been filled out, cast by the voters, and almost assuredly they were all for Donald Trump, and this postal service worker hates Donald Trump and is throwing out votes for him in order to sway the election. Again, we're talking about 99 ballots, for one thing. It's not enough to sway the election in New Jersey or anywhere else for that matter. And two, they are ballots this time. He's been complaining for a long time about them being ballots being thrown out, but they are actually applications for requesting ballots that don't make it to postal patrons. But in this case, they have actually asked for ballots, and these ballots, they should be getting to the people. People will be pissed off that they didn't get their ballots, but there's still time for them to get new ballots. The news stories, the home angle here, they were supposed to be delivered to residents of West Orange, New Jersey, my hometown. Hey, for all I know, they were going to my parents. and they want, I don't know, I forget to ask them whether they're signed up to do absentee voting, but I would guess that they are. West Orange and northern New Jersey were pretty hard hit during the peak of the coronavirus pandemic in early on in March and in April, and they probably want to do their utmost to stay out of any place where virus could be circulating. So maybe they threw it. I'm going to get this guy and find out. Who is he? Well, he's arrested, so we know his name. Nicholas Beauchene, I guess. Well, we know how he spells his name anyway. We don't know how he pronounces it. Beauchene. 26 years old, of Kearny, New Jersey, charged with one single count of delay. Look at this. Delay, secretion, or detention of mail. Secretion? Is that, I mean, obviously it's not in the bodily sense, but secretion, I guess, an alternative definition being used here, or detention of mail, and one count of obstruction of mail. So 2 total counts, 99 ballots, I don't know. But Trump, of course, thinks this is evidence of the big conspiracy against him. But as others pointed out, if you actually read the article, you realize, no, they weren't completed ballots. And while it kind of sucks, this is basically somebody saying, I didn't get a chance to deliver all of this bundle of mail, and I'm embarrassed about it, and I'd rather chuck it away and risk arrest than get in trouble with my superiors at the Postal Service. According to the criminal complaint statements made in court, approximately 1,875 pieces of mail, including 627 pieces of first class, 873 pieces of standard class, 2 pieces of certified mail, 99 general election ballots destined for residents in West Orange, and 276 campaign flyers from local candidates for West Orange Town Council and Board of Education. And I know those people, and they're going to be pissed. The mail, ballots, and flyers were recovered from dumpsters in North Arlington and West Orange on October 2nd and October 5th. Interesting, and he disperses these things interestingly, too. So North Arlington, he's from Kearny. It sounds like one of them he chucked out either on his way home from work or on his way in from work, or where he picked it up at the central mail facility or whatever. And the other one chucked out in West Orange, where he just said, I don't know what, I'm tired of delivering this stuff and forget it. Let's get the story. The first batch recovered on October 2nd included 980, this is great detail, 980 total pieces of mail and 98 ballots. So let's see, the second batch on October 5th included 552 total pieces of mail and 0 ballots. The third batch of mail, which they didn't even discuss, but was also on October 5th. See, that's how it happened. 2 batches on October 5th included the second batch on October 5th, which was the third overall, 345 total pieces of mail and 1 ballot. Federal authorities allege that on the delivery dates for which mail was recovered, Beauchene was the only USPS mail carrier assigned to deliver the mail to the addresses on the recovered mail, according to the complaint. So that's how they nailed him. There are no details as to why he allegedly dumped the mail. That's the part I'm interested in, but the cops won't be. The delay of mail charge is punishable by a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison, which is why you're, really generally aren't doing such things, and a $250,000 fine. The obstruction of mail charge is punishable by a maximum penalty of 6 months in prison and $5,000 in fines. Beauchene is set to appear in Newark Federal Court by video conference Wednesday afternoon. So I guess if you're waiting on an absentee ballot in West Orange, New Jersey, and it hasn't shown up, double check. Go and find out whether you can get another one sent. I don't know whether you'll be able to find out whether you're one of the 99 that got tossed out. That's interesting, too. I don't know. He may have just chucked the whole bundle. If I were him and I was that desperate, I guess I might look through it and say, what are people really going to miss here? Like, if I chuck out the political flyers, they're not going to care. If I chuck out, maybe some people will be upset, like if their Valpak coupon gets tossed. But absentee ballots, I guess I'd say, what the hell? I got to make some rounds anyway. I'm going to some of these houses. I might as well deliver these things, and then people won't notice the rest of it. They'll probably think I'm doing them a favor. But now, 5.5 years in prison on the table, and $255,000 in fines as a possibility. He lives in Kearney, where I think there actually is a prison already, so he won't have to go far. That's good news, and everyone will be able to visit him. But really, don't throw out the mail. It's not wise. That's unfortunate. And, well, folks in West Orange, I hope you're on top of it. You should all be listening to the show as hometown fans anyway, and I've done you a great service in clearing this up for you. I guess I'm going to call my parents after the show and let them know. I should call them live on the air, right, and check it out. But I don't know. That would be pretty interesting, but somehow inappropriate, I think. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. I wanted to read the story behind the delay of the Durham investigation, just to see what details we might be able to tease out from the short piece in The Hill. And I'm sure I have. Well, did we find other write-ups of it from... yeah, okay. Well, we have the Axios report, which is probably no more informative, but for some reason so much more widely respected among political punditry. I don't know. What the hell? We'll go with the Hill on this one because it's less annoying with all the bullet points. They just tell you the story. Celine Castronuovo, who very well may be a resident of West Orange, New Jersey, very, very large Italian-American population there. I grew up. This is how I can pronounce even crazy-looking Italian surnames with relative ease, unlike some other ethnicities. But that one of the great things I took away from my childhood in West Orange, including never having missed a single ballot there anyway. But anyhow, Attorney General William Barr, it is reported, has told top Republican officials that the Justice Department's report on the origins of the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election will not be released prior to Election Day, according to Axios. So even The Hill referring to Axios, but found it too annoying to simply run their reporting on it. They digested it themselves. So again, just to be clear what's happening here, in case you've missed everything or you're brand new to the show, the Durham investigation is into the origins of the investigation into Russian interference. In other words, they think, it's still their theory in the Trump administration, that the real crime was the decision to launch an investigation into Trump. Because, of course, nothing was going on, and this was all a frame-up job to make Trump look bad. And he's actually gotten the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and an ex-U.S. attorney to spend all their time looking into it. Who was it that said something was happening? Because nothing was happening. We should catch and punish that guy. Instead, and that's what they're doing. And I guess this was supposed to be an October surprise, and I guess maybe people were too ready for the nonsense, and maybe they said, well, let's not waste our time with it then. A senior White House official and a congressional aide informed Axios of the remarks, with one source saying that U.S. Attorney John Durham, who is leading the report, is not concerned with adhering to political pressure to complete the study by a certain deadline, adding that Durham is working deliberately and in a calculated manner. How strange for somebody appointed to the job by Bill Barr and Donald Trump. Weird. This news comes as many Republicans hoped the report would reveal abuses by the Obama administration and intelligence community that would give the party a boost on November 3rd. This is the nightmare scenario. Essentially, the year and a half of arguably the number one issue for the Republican base is virtually meaningless if this doesn't happen before the election, a GOP congressional aide reportedly told the publication. Both the Justice Department and the White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment from The Hill. Who would, really? The report comes as President Trump on Thursday took aim at Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Attorney General William Barr, as well as FBI Director Christopher Wray, during an interview on Fox Business, with the president arguing that the three officials have not moved fast enough in their findings on his political opponents, which is, of course, crazy corrupt to be demanding. But there it is. I was wondering why he had mentioned in one of the crazy calls to Fox. Maybe Pompeo will find Hillary Clinton's deleted emails. And I was like, why would the Secretary of State find them? And I mean, the best theories that I had proposed to me via Twitter were, yeah, maybe because she was Secretary of State, maybe she left them in a drawer somewhere and the new Secretary of State will be able to find them. Somebody else said, well, obviously they think that maybe Ukraine has them, or that CrowdStrike, which, I don't even remember exactly what role they played in all this whole thing, but Republicans became convinced was a Ukrainian company, and it isn't. But they would find the server where her emails were being stored, hidden in a vault in Ukraine or something. Just crazy ideas that, whatever. This is why they haven't been able to turn anything up in a year and a half. They keep chasing these leads. Also, nothing happened. I mean, that's another basic problem with the investigation. Trump referred specifically to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's lack of consequences for using a private email server, as well as the Obama administration's involvement in the Russia investigation. To be honest, which is a crazy thing for him to say, Bill Barr is going to go down as either the greatest attorney general in the history of the country, or he's going to go down as, a very sad situation, like falling out of a window in Kyiv or something like that. Trump told host Maria Bartiromo, I'll be honest with you, again, second time he has said that in as many sentences. He's got all the information he needs, which is amazing because he doesn't have any. They want to get more. They'll keep getting more. I said, you don't need it anymore. Sad at heart, isn't it? Trump also scolded Pompeo, one of the president's most fervent supporters, for not working to find and release Clinton's deleted emails, a subject of fascination for the president and his supporters throughout his first term. They're in the State Department, but Mike Pompeo has been unable to get them out, which is very sad, actually. Trump said, I'm not happy about him for that reason. He was unable to get them out. I don't know why. You're running the State Department, you get them out. Oh, well, let's hit the steroids again. Why not? The president on Thursday also claimed Wray has been disappointing and slow-moving in efforts to find wrongdoing by the Obama administration. That's actually the end of the article. It's a very awkward end to this, but gee whiz, no explanation offered for why the State Department hasn't been able to find her quote-unquote missing emails, why the Justice Department hasn't been able to find her quote-unquote missing emails, why the FBI hasn't been able to find her quote-unquote missing emails, why neither or any of these three organizations have been able to turn up the obvious wrongdoing by the Obama administration who was out to get me a year and a half into the investigation. You wonder at what point he'll give up on it, but I guess the steroids are just going to keep it going. Certainly all the way through the election. That's all he has, even though it's not panning out. He's going to stick with it. All right, let's see. Let me also mention just before our next break, just to get it on record, we're not 100% sure what it means, but widely circulating on Twitter is a photo of Turning Point USA's nominal head, I guess factual head, since the original funder of TPUSA died some time ago, and I guess bequeathed all his money to keep Charlie Kirk working as the 30-plus-year-old ostensible head of college Republican lunatic organization Turning Point USA. He's just going to stay in college forever. Anyway, having posed for a photo with one of the lunatics just arrested in Michigan for plotting terrorism and the kidnap of the governor of Michigan. So you never really want to be caught doing the thumbs up photo with a guy like that. But, that's bound to happen in Republican politics because they're all lunatics. They all deserve to be thrown out, imprisoned, or tossed down a well eventually. And, no surprise there then that would have happened. I'll share that tweet with the rest of you in the roundup. Time now for our third and final break before heading into the last segment of the day. And we'll catch up on all sorts of news. Local, world, national, crazy, non-crazy, not really any non-crazy. After this, so let's see, anything else? Some idea of where we're going to go after this break. But I guess that'll be me ruminating on it by myself during the 2-minute break. We'll be back with something fantastic, doubtless, after this. So stay tuned. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. So much to pack into this last segment. You know we're not going to get to it all, but let's see. I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention a few of these things, or at least read the headlines to point you to stories that you can catch up with after the show and over the weekend. So let's see. First, more on the morons who are running the investigation into nothing. The New York Times is reporting on it as well. The Hill, gives it a glossing over. Axios gives it annoying treatment. Maybe the Times will give it something of some interest. But I happen to see Zeynep Tufekci commenting on the New York Times story on the subject. The title of the Times story: Trump lashes out at his cabinet with calls to indict political rivals. The pressure on his top administration officials to take action came as President Trump bristled at the restraints of his illness and also, law and the Constitution and stuff like that. But he's bristling at that all the time, which is the subject of Zeynep's comments here. The President of the United States called into a news show, enraged that his own Justice Department isn't indicting his electoral opponent, despite, he says, he literally admits right on TV, his constantly urging them to do so. How have we become so used to this that there's barely a reaction? Good point, and a little bit more to come in the thread, and it's always worth listening to what she has to say about these things. The president is on record saying that he's pressuring his own attorney general to indict his electoral opponent, and he's very angry at being told that they need more evidence. Yes, everyone has gotten used to this, but there really should be no other topic to discuss right now. I mean political topic. She says people are discussing tax rates and this and that, and yes, even the Supreme Court, without addressing this. I'm not clutching my pearls, and yes, there is an election soon, but that's exactly why rolling our eyes or silence on this issue is not appropriate. If he loses, every legislator will claim that they never supported him, or they never looked the other way, etc. Everyone holding or running for office, or even commentators, should be asked this now. The president says he's pressuring his AG to indict his opponent. What should we do? I don't think anyone running for office should be allowed to talk about anything else until they give a straightforward answer on this issue. People cannot be allowed to argue about the optimal tax rate till we get reminded what is happening and that he still holds the nuclear codes. I find myself in agreement, of course, but not surprised that it's simply not happening. It's just the way things have panned out in this Trump era, even though I guess probably nobody could have predicted it prior to Trump that we would be so casual in dismissing this sort of thing. But there we are. It's I'm not, it's, what can I tell you? It's another thing that we should be impeaching him for. Yes, even now, 20-something days from an election. Yes, even after the election, even after the results, even when it's clear that he, well, by law should be exiting office by January 20th, it should be happening. But I don't know, not only for good reason, but also for bad reason, or what Republicans would call bad reason, which is holding up the Senate. And yes, I understand that the Senate, if they're willing to break or remake all their rules, can dismiss articles of impeachment relatively quickly. I don't think they're willing to break all or reshape all of their rules, including the ones that say we have to spend time holding roll call votes to decide whether or not to dismiss this thing. I mean, I guess you can do anything you want with the gavel. If you're willing to stand there on C-SPAN, well, for one thing, and say, I order C-SPAN to turn its cameras off, and if they don't, you go up there and break them, and then say, we're going to have a voice vote about dismissing this and any other article of impeachment that ever comes from the House of Representatives regarding Donald Trump in the future, without bringing them up again, and we're holding a voice vote. Let me hear you. The ayes have it, and that's it, and we're leaving. I mean, unless you're willing to go that far, you really can gum up the works by sending them a bunch of impeachment resolutions and separate out the counts into different resolutions. Send 100, send 1,000. Honestly, at this point, I mean, I guess Zeynep would agree with me that there really can't be any other topic of discussion. But if that's really, truly what you think, then you really, truly have to stand behind parliamentary maneuvering like this. Why should you be doing anything else? Right? I know every time when it comes down to the bottom line, when the action is, well, then we'll send impeachment resolutions. Eyes start rolling. I'm like, well, what are you supposed to do then? How else are you supposed to handle it? All right. Well, we'll never get to the other things if we don't at least skim some of this article. I'm curious about what the Times has to fill in by way of detail on this thing. But, you know, how much could there be? Peter Baker and Maggie Haberman, if anyone's going to find more, I guess it'll be them. We don't know whether it'll be reliable or whether it'll pan out or whether everyone was lying to them, but they'll write the things down. We know that. Trump berated his own cabinet officers on Thursday for not prosecuting or implicating his political enemies, lashing out even as he announced that he hoped to return to the campaign trail Saturday, just 9 days after he tested positive for the coronavirus. That's a detail I wasn't expecting to be in here, but is worth commenting on. Yeah, he's going to be, he says, having a rally in Florida and possibly another one in Pennsylvania later on in the weekend. By all rights, he should still be highly contagious and probably unable to walk up the stairs to the stage, but somehow, some way, he thinks he's going to manage, and I don't know. I guess we'll stand by and find out whether that's really the case. You know what? I should probably even use this as a jumping off point, because as interesting as some of the details the Times may have included in the piece might be, it's still at bottom we know the basic story here, and between the Hill's summary of the Axios reporting and Zeynep's commentary on it, I think actually, quite honestly, that's the impression of the story I'd like to leave you with. So let me move on to something else. As important as that story is, and I recommend reading it, and I probably will read it after I get off the air and or watch whatever might be left of the 25th Amendment press conference. And I see some contemporaneous reporting from there. By the way, joined by Jamie Raskin in putting this proposal forward. Always a very interesting constitutional scholar type guy. All right, let me jump to another couple other stories. The Washington Post kind of picking up where the USA Today people left off, not in terms of tracing the contacts, but in terms of discussing how crazy it is that the contacts haven't been contacted about this stuff. Also, I guess Trump spending a lot of yesterday blaming somehow the Gold Star families who came to the event the day after the Amy Coney Barrett event in the Rose Garden, blaming them for giving him possibly the COVID infection that he's got, which is, politically just about the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, and also scientifically not highly likely. But the Washington Post's gang has got a piece here. Isaac, Stanley Becker, Rosalind Helderman, Josh Dawsey, and Amy Gardner on a piece under the title, Guests at Trump's Events Scattered Across the Country, Potentially Exposed. Many of their contacts may never be identified. This, of course, because they're just not doing contact tracing, which is crazy and contrary to everything we know about this or any other disease. I mean, it's just bananas. But there they are. They're doing it and all becoming super spreaders as a result. And Trump's not going to stop traveling either. Give you a taste for what's in this article. It starts this way. An evangelical pastor preached in Georgia. An attorney exercised at a gym in California. A political strategist went out on the stump in North Carolina. And a cabinet secretary embarked on a 3-state tour of manufacturing facilities. Each had been in Washington days before, visiting the White House for a September 26th ceremony introducing President Trump's Supreme Court nominee. The elegant affair, involving much of the country's conservative elite, is now believed to have possibly contributed to a coronavirus outbreak, sickening Trump and at least 9 other members of his administration, in addition to top Republican officials and members of Congress and the military. With no systematic effort to trace or advise the hundreds of guests at the Rose Garden ceremony and other events in the surrounding days, many made their way home and resumed their busy schedules, according to interviews with more than 40 people who attended events with the president between September 25th and October 1st, when Trump announced he had tested positive. Experts said the fallout, driven largely by individuals forced to make their own choices without clear instructions from central authority, is emblematic of the nation's response to the pandemic and helps explain why the virus remains uncontained nearly 10 months after it first arrived in the United States. The infection of Trump and those around him was, even more starkly, a window into an attitude of invulnerability and indifference that surrounds the president. One of the people ensnared in the outbreak was Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, who mingled with donors at a September 25th event headlined by Trump at his hotel in Washington. She tested positive 5 days later, but only made her diagnosis public on October 2nd after informing the president that morning. A person close to her said she had attempted to reach the president sooner, but was unable to talk to him. For 36 hours after her diagnosis, the RNC made no attempt to inform donors who had attended this extended indoor fundraiser with McDaniel. Only on October 2nd, after the president had also tested positive, were attendees told they might have been exposed. Guests of the president and his campaign returned to at least 20 states, often by plane, so everybody on the plane is sick now too. They visited college campuses and sat across the dinner table from elderly parents. They attended church and addressed crowds at indoor conventions, including on the topic of election security. Upon learning they may have been exposed, some chose to quarantine or get tested. Others were waiting instead to see if they developed symptoms, despite months of warnings from scientists that it's possible to be contagious without feeling ill. And in many cases, the attendees said they're not worried, expressing faith in the health precautions taken by their hosts, despite the fact that everybody has seen that they have effed the effing F out of that. If you don't mind my saying so, that's my own editorial comment. Of course, feeling tip-top, said Frank Cannon, who obviously is now destined to die, a conservative strategist, upon returning from a campaign swing through North Carolina in support of Republican Senator Tom Tillis, who attended the Barrett event and later tested positive. He couldn't do that swing himself because he's sick. Cannon also attended the same event but said he used a rapid test and received a negative result, so F science. I would go to such an event again, said, who's this? Yechezkel? Wow. Moskowitz. Wow. Okay, a nice Yiddish name there. A venture capitalist from Long Island who attended the September 30th fundraiser at Bedminster, New Jersey club, Trump's club there. I felt safe, and that's just because that's difficult. If anybody was trying to pronounce his name to his face, he almost certainly got an extra face full of droplets. Probably just everybody called him Moskowitz and left it at that. Trump attended the Bedminster fundraiser even though a close aide, Hope Hicks, had tested positive for the coronavirus earlier in the day. A timeline compiled by the RNC indicates the president was inside with donors for about, 65 minutes hours before he announced his own positive test. Whoop! He didn't wear a mask. A list provided to state authorities showed he was around more than 200 people. The reaction to the outbreak was notably different in the communities where the events occurred, and in some places to which the guests returned, where businesses temporarily shuttered or quarantined after contact with associates of the president. People have gone into quarantine from Minnesota to Massachusetts Avenue, bracing for possible secondary infections. Holy Angels, a nonprofit run by the Sisters of Mercy in Belmont, North Carolina, which provides jobs and other opportunities for people with disabilities, closed 3 of its businesses on October 2nd for a day of deep cleaning. That won't help you. Following a surprise visit from Ivanka Trump. Although it is interesting, great for her brand that everybody has to spray disinfectant wherever Ivanka goes. Sister Nancy Nance. I'm not kidding. That's the actual name. Nancy Nance. That's not even her rap name. Vice President of Community Relations for Holy Angels said the group took precautions not knowing immediately the status of Trump's daughter or of others in her entourage. And by the way, there's been no health news about there either. They were at the events. What's up? And when have they how come they haven't gotten the miracle cure yet? Well, anyway, Sister Nancy Nance said the businesses had just reopened after about 6 months in which they were closed to protect the medically fragile population served by Holy Angels. They just opened. Ivanka Trump came through. You got to close again now. I've been here to contaminate you. I don't think the White House as a whole handled the COVID-19 pandemic appropriately, Nance said. They've downplayed it. She believes that. And now it's pushing people like me into the political arena that I don't want to be in. Some guests said they regretted participating in the events, despite extensive security procedures that made them feel safe at the time. That's the thing. Guests in the Rose Garden described multiple checkpoints where attendees were required to wear masks, although later they took them off once they were really close to one another. There was a false sense of security being in the presence of people around the president who had been tested, said one person who was pictured in the Rose Garden hugging Senator Mike Lee of Utah and shaking hands with Christie. Both have since tested positive. I've thought about it and I've talked to my wife, and that's a good lesson learned, said the attendee, who received one negative test and was considering whether to take another. Yes, you should. And who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss private health matters. None of those interviewed by the Washington Post said they'd been contacted by the federal government. Obviously, they're not going to help. None had been advised by federal authorities about protocol to keep others safe during a period in which the infection could still develop. Don't expect it to happen either. Rebecca Holler Ashworth, whose brother Lance Corporal Luke Holler was killed in 2006 by a roadside bomb in Iraq, said she and her relatives, a group of 7, traveled from Texas for the September 27th White House event for Gold Star families. She said she had not been contacted by the White House, but that no one in her family has become ill. That's lucky. No one's gotten sick. I felt like everything was handled so well, and we were very comfortable. It was a phenomenal event. Clock's ticking on you guys, though. The White House says it is only tracing contacts for the 48-hour period preceding the president's positive test, in line with CDC definitions of a close contact. If someone falls in that time frame, White House spokesman Judd Deere says the medical unit makes appropriate notifications and recommendations, which is to say they don't, because that's how you read a Trumpster comment. All right, what else can we glean from this article, and how much longer does it go on? I see Kellyanne Conway in some of the pictures. Maybe we'll skip down to that part. At least 2 of the people infected who were also in attendance at the Rose Garden were Chris Christie and Kellyanne Conway. They also attended the debate prep. That was another super spreader event. The Rose Garden ceremony and the VIP party inside the diplomatic reception room. Afterwards, White House officials haven't determined where they contracted the virus, because they don't want to know. Several aides who have been in close contact with Hicks said they only learned many hours later, and often through secondhand channels. Let's see. Rich Roberts, a physician and retired pharmaceutical executive who attended the Bedminster fundraiser, said in an interview that he had assumed that the rapid coronavirus test administered by the Secret Service would have been highly accurate and used cutting-edge technology. But he hasn't been doing his continuing medical education, I guess, since he moved over to the pharmaceutical side. Roberts said he was not worried about catching the virus from other attendees, believing that even if they had contracted the virus, Now, their negative test result from then would likely mean that they were not contagious, except you never know. All right. Well, let's see. I think we'll jump out of this article for the moment just to get to a couple other items that are of interest. There's much more to it. The Washington Post doing a very thorough job with it. Let's see. Other things I wanted to share with you. Let's see. Oh, why not? I'll share you this with you. This thread from Dave Weigel, who makes an interesting or picks up on an interesting observation on the court expansion topic. I found some interesting stuff being circulated last night. Once again, somebody commenting, Republicans always, of course, opposed in principle to the expansions of Supreme Courts. We now find that the governor of Arizona getting set to sign legislation expanding the size of that state's Supreme Court for whatever reason. So clearly not an across-the-board opposition. But monkeying with the courts in general, not something that Republicans typically shy away from. Good memory here, originating this thought from the Halloween named Spooky Evan, but noting here. And of course, you may follow him already, as I do, on Twitter as Evan7257, if you need to know the handle. But just noting for everybody, I remember when Republicans tried to unpack the D.C. Circuit, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, by removing seats so that Obama couldn't fill them. Do you remember that? Sort of lost in the mists of time. But yeah, you can adjust the size of any of the courts. There were a couple of vacancies in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals that Obama was getting set to fill with appointments, and the Republicans in the Senate looked to introduce a bill to reduce the size of the court so that there would no longer be available vacancies for Obama to fill. Dave, at first, I think, erroneously recalls that it was Chuck Grassley introducing what he called the Stop Court Packing Act to prevent Obama from filling open seats on the circuit by reducing the number of seats on the circuit from 11 to 8 judges. And interesting, just so you get some idea of it, when Republicans say, we got to stop the court packing by Democrats, don't forget that Republicans considered filling existing vacancies without expanding the size of the court. They considered that to be court packing, and that they were going to stop court packing by changing the size of the court. So they're not above that. And then, of course, I think later on in the thread, Weigel realizes, correction, Grassley led the charge, but the House bill was introduced by then member of the House, Tom Cotton. So we have another thing to blame them for. Yes, and later in the same thread here, Parker Malloy noting that Doug Ducey, governor of Arizona, is signing this new legislation. So I'll share that with you in the roundup too. But just a good point to bring up in terms of the consistency or lack thereof among Republican legislators. Plenty to read about the FBI bust on what some were calling the Michigan militia figures, and then others objecting during the day. Hey, why not just call them terrorists? That's what they are. And it's a good point, and something we can see if we can work into the conversation going forward. But the Daily Beast has what appears to be an excellent rundown on how the arrest went down, and some excellent details from looking into the indictments and scary details about what these guys were up to. You should certainly read that over the weekend. In the time that we have left, perhaps I'll point to a story that looks to be of some interest and is connected to things we've spent a great deal of time on in the past, but that hasn't gotten any attention. I don't know what it's doing in the Sacramento Bee, but it's there. But I got the feeling that maybe the reporting may have originated from down in Florida, I would have thought. But I don't know why I think that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Ben Weider, Wieder, W-I-E-D-E-R, writing for the Sacramento Bee here. Here's the topic. Russian confirmed as source of funds in alleged Parnas-Fruman, remember them? Straw donor scheme. We get some. This was not a name that I thought we were going to get. I didn't know. I wasn't waiting for him to come in. I thought that we had kind of decided maybe who were the oligarchs most likely to be behind this straw donor scheme, and it turns out it's someone entirely different. Last October, federal prosecutors brought campaign finance charges against two associates of Rudy Giuliani, you remember them, Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, who had worked with him to dig up dirt on Joe Biden in Ukraine to benefit President Donald Trump. Those Ukraine efforts contributed to the impeachment charges brought against Trump in January and put Parnas and Fruman's messy business history on display. And since then, they've kind of disappeared. Hasn't been much about them, so I thought I would dive into this. The two men were accused of using money provided by a then unnamed Russian businessman for political donations to help their efforts to obtain marijuana licenses. And now we know why the California interest here. They are scheduled to go on trial next year. Get this pop-up out of the way. Along with two co-conspirators on a pretrial call on Thursday. The Russian businessman was identified as Andrei Muravyev, whose name I have not heard so far, identified by a lawyer for one of Parnas's and Fruman's two alleged co-conspirators, Andrei Kukushkin. McClatchy was the first to report Muravyev as the likely foreign national last October, and I somehow missed it. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I read it and I forgot. I don't know. Interesting. Days after the charges against Parnas and Fruman and their alleged co-conspirators were unveiled on October 10th, that's October 10th, 2019, a year ago tomorrow. And importantly, the 39th anniversary of my own bar mitzvah. Everybody please keep that in mind, that today is sandwiched in between that important anniversary and National Pierogi Day. Okay, and the Sacramento Bee reported soon after that Kukushkin and Muravyev were partners in multiple Sacramento cannabis businesses, there's the connection, with local pot king Garib Karapetyan. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly or who that guy is. Kukushkin's lawyer, Gerald Lefcourt, added Thursday that federal prosecutors have subpoenaed Muravyev's emails. Federal prosecutors filed a superseding indictment in the case on September 17th of this year, adding fraud charges against the business operated by Parnas and his partner David Correa, remember him, called Fraud Guarantee. We all recall that one. Can't forget that business. The new indictment also contained more detail about the alleged foreign straw donation scheme involving Muravyev. He allegedly provided $1 million in September and October 2018. That was to be used for efforts to obtain marijuana licenses in Nevada, that one I heard about, California, New York, and New Jersey, including political donations that they believed would help them obtain the licenses. Federal campaign finance law prohibits donations from foreign nationals and straw donations made in someone else's name. The money provided by Muravyev was intended to pay for both future political donations and to reimburse Parnas and Fruman for political donations they'd already made. The two ramped up their political giving in 2018, including $325,000 to America First Action, a political action committee supporting Donald Trump, and $50,000 to a committee supporting Florida Republican gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis, coronavirus most wanted number 2. Both donations were given in the name of Parnas and Fruman's newly created natural gas company, Global Energy Producers. Parnas, they don't produce any, of course. Parnas also hosted 2 fundraisers for DeSantis, who narrowly won election in 2018 against Democrat Andrew Gillum. The day after the 2018 election, Muravyev sent congratulations to Parnas, Fruman, and Kukushkin, quote, on victory. Kukushkin added congratulations on, quote, victory in Florida and asked, when can we get a license and look for stores? So they were all ready to jump on it. Okay, and we're a little bit late in our outro music, so we'll extend things, about 15 seconds or so more than usual, just to have a nice outro here. The group was unsuccessful, as it turns out, in obtaining marijuana licenses in Florida and Nevada. But as McClatchy previously reported, Muravyev has a financial stake in at least one and possibly several California businesses with active cannabis licenses. In the call on Thursday, the judge overseeing the case against Parnas Fruman and their two alleged co-conspirators, U.S. District Judge Paul Oetken, pushed back the trial 1 month from February 1st, 2021 to March 1st of that year in response to concerns presented from defense lawyers that they hadn't had enough time to review the government's evidence in the case. I'll just finish it all up here. Federal prosecutors indicated that they had so far sought 22 search warrants in the case and that they requested the defendants obtain a terabyte hard drive for the new evidence they're planning to turn over for a review. Oetken also said that under new COVID-19 restrictions in the Southern District of New York, where the case will be heard, they don't have big enough courtroom to accommodate a trial with 4 defendants. Another unforeseen consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So just bringing you up to date there. There's much more happening out there in the world, and that's why Justice Putnam brings you the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. Rounding up news from all over the country and all over the world as usual. Do stay tuned for his take on the news next.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning
with David Waldman.
Yeah, Justice will be revising the story of our old friend Elliot Freudy, who we didn't get a chance to discuss, even though Ian mentioned him earlier. Plus news, let's say, from, wow, look at this. Chile is keeping close tabs on a large fleet of 300 Chinese fishing vessels that have stirred up controversy all along the Pacific coast of South America. Find out why next.